My name's Brian. I run Freezone Retreat. I was what you call a bad drug addict, and yeah, and I got to the stage where I really had to choose between life and death, and through little miracles and people helping me, I managed to get clean. It's easy to get clean, even though it's quite difficult. It's easy to get clean, it's hard to stay clean. That's another ball game. Getting clean and staying clean is two different things. When life gets hard, you know, divorce, bereavement, whatever it is, you know, most people go to the pub and get drunk with their mates, and you know, and they console themselves that way. You know, like relationship breakup, something like that. You know, you'll go down the pub and get drunk with your friends, and they go, "Oh, everything's gonna be all right," and you go, "Yeah, yeah." But we can't do that. You know, we can't do that. For me, anyway, it's about building a connection with myself. Because when I was using drugs, I think my main thing was I didn't have a connection. I didn't have a connection with the world. I didn't have a connection with people. I didn't have a connection with society. I was on the outside of everything. I never felt connected to anything. And most importantly, I didn't feel connected to myself. Who am I? You know? Because I didn't know who I was when I cleaned up. But I remember, you know, I went, first of all, I went sat by a beach, and I was just really quiet, and I watched the sun go down. I felt peace. And this is when I was about four years clean. So I went down to the Buddhist centre, and yeah, it was good. I didn't really want to be a Buddhist. You know, I'm not very religious at all. So I thought, you know, I'd like to learn how to meditate. I would like to learn stuff like that, you know. And I wondered if there's a place where I could go. So I looked online, and there was Buddhist sort of like retreats. There was Christian retreats. There was Hare Krishna retreats. There was all these retreats. But at that stage of my life, I couldn't afford them, you know, so they were like a lot of money. I thought, ooh. So I thought, you know what, I'll start my own. I thought there must be other people like me in recovery who want to learn this stuff, you know, want to learn the value of meditation, to learn how to connect to oneself. And I said, well, I'm going to put on this event I found this nice bit of land in the Purbex. I said, well, I'm going to put on an event, and we called it a pilot weekend. It was the first Freezone event, it was a pilot weekend. And the first weekend, we had 8 people come. 8 people showed up. It cost them £50 for the weekend, all food included. Freezone's not about making money. What we do is totally non-profit.
I had nothing to say on Christmas Day when you threw all your clothes in the snow.
Your own body in your own time, listening to the body. For those that feel they wish to intensify their twist, if you come back to the neutral position and bring your knees in towards your chest, if the floor.
My name's Matthew Farron, and yeah, I got clean up in Nottingham, and it was when I was aged 25, and I come from a family of alcoholics. It's kind of in my lineage. My father was an alcoholic, and I grew up as a kid being very fearful, and the only emotion allowed in our family was of anger. First drank when I was aged 13 at my first kind of party. It was like finding a magic potion. That gave me freedom from this kind of fear. And then I really enjoyed my drinking, but everything else was kind of the rest of my existence was kind of very anxious and fearful. I was using other drugs. I was working out of Miami in the late 80s, so it's when the first wave of crack came through. So I was using crack cocaine and cocaine and, amphetamines and hallucinogenics.
I hid it from, they were tree surgeons who came while I was here after the gallery.
Chris, 40, my background, been quite successful in life with money and material things. Got to a point in my life where addiction took over, and was always trying to chase happiness through external things, never internal. And in the end that got the better of me. And then went down sort of a rabbit hole of addiction and alcoholism, to the point of bankruptcy, homelessness. I've been clean now 3 years, maybe 3 years now. I've been trying to grow spiritually. So in that 3 year period I've been working voluntary and giving back into the community instead of taking out the community, what I used to do. I believe the 12-step program is a spiritual nudge into a different life, into a different direction. Hence why I'm at Freezone, try and seek deeper into myself.
I'm from a pit village outside of Nottingham called Eastwood. Youngest of 7 children. I grew up in a very violent household. Big brothers drank, fought, the violence continued indoors. So I grew up as a very, very angry child, very scared child. And I had this mad head all the time, living in fantasy. Fantasy was my first addiction. Always fantasising about being somewhere else, being somebody else, being anywhere but where I was and being anything but me. I lost my dad at 10 years old, and he'd been really ill all my life. My dad lost his legs in an accident, so I kind of grew up around somebody who was really poorly. I was the youngest, like I say, and my responsibility was to look after him. I didn't know this at the time, but I grew up very, very resentful, very, very resentful. And the first drug I came across was alcohol. I was about 7 years old, and I really liked what it did to me. And then obviously didn't drink, just liked it. And then after Dad had died, where I lived, there was a whole craze of sniffing glue and solvents. And I'd just gone into comprehensive school, and a lot of us used to go away and sniff solvents, which kind of moved on to different solvents, which kind of went on to petrol. Obviously cigarettes, I've been smoking since I was a child anyway, and alcohol. And it just progressed from there. I would kind of say that from the age of 12, when I started to discover pharmaceuticals, I had a brother that was epileptic, who was prescribed barbiturates. I found those, discovered I really liked them. So I would pinch his medication, and it just progressed, and for the next 24 years I used one substance or another every single day.
And you burn your hair and knocked over chairs. My name is Mel, and I'm from London originally, and a good friend of mine had come to Freezone a couple of times to enhance her recovery, and so she invited me to join her. So I came to my first Freezone I think 4 years ago, and loved it from the first moment, and just found that something about Freezone and the space it provided was really unique, and something that I had been really craving, and it just allowed me to explore the sort of spiritual journey I was on in terms of my own recovery on a deeper level, but in a very safe, held environment with people who understood me in a very intimate way, even though they were perfect strangers when I first met them, aside from my friends. So that's kind of how I first came to Freezone. From quite a young age, had quite a lot of, I guess, emotional experiences and behaviours that were distressing to me and sometimes to other people. And as I grew, that eventually manifested in terms of unhealthy relationships with drugs and alcohol primarily. So I have like a sort of history of really struggling with my mental health, and spent quite a number of years feeling quite lost. I just tried to stay out of your way.
So yeah, these 8 people showed up, and this woman Ulish was awesome, you know. She sat and we meditated, and then I got the idea about the holistic therapies, and I got the idea about you know, we have meditation, we have other workshops as well, you know, not just meditation, to do a spiritual retreat, you know. So I'd done that for about a year. I was doing one every month, and yeah, people showed up to everyone. So I thought, well, this is something I want to carry on, you know, because we was all learning how to meditate, you know, we was all learning good stuff. I found the value in it, which was most important, you know. And the value to me is when life gets hard in recovery, for when I've cultivated a place that I can go to spiritually inside me, that I can cope, you know, cope with the stress of living life on life's terms. A lot of people relapse, and I do believe it's because they don't work on their spirit, they don't work on their connection.
I just got in my car and drove away.
The idea about having a spiritual awakening, or the need for that in sobriety or in recovery, is to see that we are connected and we are whole without the use of those drugs. So we have the need for an awakening, but then we have the need to continue this in our daily, day-to-day lives. So after 12, 14, 16 years, you know, unless you keep this momentum going and the freshness going, then it can slip.
Where the state highway starts, I stop my car.
Freezone is not meant to be recovery. We do not claim to be recovery, but what we claim to be, or what we say we are, which I believe we are, is an aid to recovery. We provide an environment where people can explore themselves, they can explore beliefs, they can be exposed to different belief systems. Some might work, some might not work. And what we hope is to kickstart that process, like it did for us. That whole process of working the 3rd, the 7th and the 11th steps, which very heavily sort of lean onto the sort of higher power aspect. We hope, I've seen it happen with people, when people come here for a weekend and then they go out into the outside world, and it's almost like a suck it and see kind of thing. They're starting to try different things. The mind's becoming more and more open, and some people have actually become we're all spiritual beings anyway, I'm not going to try, you know, let's not pretend we're not, but they've kind of gone down that conscious chosen down that spiritual path as a direct result of coming to Freezone. And I've seen that recovery's been enhanced by it. You know, although we run it on 12-step lines, as in no alcohol, no drugs, we kind of go on with the 12 traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, which kind of is about anonymity. We don't break anybody's anonymity. You come here, you can do what you want, you can be what you want, as long as it doesn't cause any trouble for anybody else. You know, so we run it almost in a sense, almost like a meeting, you know, by the same guidelines, you know, and it works really well. And it gives people that safety and that security to know that they can come and be themselves, which my life was basically based on not being myself. And I think that's true for most addicts. You know, although it is kind of pitched for people in recovery, people that aren't in recovery from addiction from drugs also come to Freezone. You know, we are quite expansive, you know, and I think a lot of those people benefit a lot more from the human connectedness.
And shout across the sky, stare out and at your shining eyes. You know, Freezone doesn't have a boss or an authority. You don't come to a gate and get given a wristband and then, you know, you take responsibility and you chip in and everybody contributes. And yeah, I think being on a journey of seeking and discovery together, and then using that journey as a dual opportunity, not only for the self but to connect with others and to you know, commiserate and celebrate the joys and the enlightening aha moments and the deeply difficult, sort of sorrowful moments with people, and that unity is mind-blowing to me. You know, that's the game changer that really gets me, and it feels like a family. It gives that familiarity and that closeness that a lot of us have, you know, really crave a sense of belonging somewhere. And you know, for me, Freezone is so unique in the way that it provides that. When you fell asleep with blood on your teeth.
This weekend I needed to come away, I needed to sit with myself, I needed to just analyse and just step back from life and the world and just have my own space to, to sort of see where I'm going and what I'm doing. I actually feel like I'm on the right path, and I do feel like I am. And I'm going to go away, being a lot more positive and a lot more relaxed.
The only thing we've all got in common is that we're in recovery. There's so many different people from so many different walks of life, but they're all looking for some sense of serenity in their life. You know, we've had people here on the edge of a relapse, you know, who've been out there, and that's another thing I found that Freezone does, which it wasn't intended in the beginning, but if people are out there, they're going through a divorce or they've lost their job, and it all gets a bit much, and they come for a weekend here. You know, they can get away from it all. You know, get shown a lot of love, get nurtured. You know, get given hope back. You know what I mean? So everything's going to be all right.
But I went back for my clothes when the sun finally rose. Oh well, you were still passed out in the yard. Listen to me, butterfly. There's only so much wine that you can drink in one life, but it will never be enough to save you from the bottom of your glass.